You won't be joining the family trip because it's not fun when there are other people around. But hey, I might bring you a souvenir if I remember, said my mother-in-law cheerfully on the phone. I was supposed to go on the trip with my in-laws and husband, but I got left behind. Since we got married, my mother-in-law, who really loves her son, never misses a chance to make a sarcastic comment or nag me to stay home. This is becoming a problem. When I told her about it, my mother-in-law just laughed, almost like she was making fun of me. Is that a problem? Too bad for you. Consider it a punishment for not listening to my advice. And then she hung up, saying it's not my problem but yours, right? I'm Jessica, a 30-year-old working housewife. I handle household chores and work part-time at the local supermarket. I've been married to my husband, Mike, for 3 years now. We met while working at the same company, though in different departments. We used to chat a lot on the same floor even before we started dating. Our connection deepened during a year-end party at the office. Despite being in different departments, I ended up sitting next to Mike. Since we were already close, our conversation flowed naturally. Mike excused himself to the bathroom at one point, and I was left listening to the lively chatter of the group next to us. Suddenly, a tipsy boss from another department began bothering me, insisting I drink more. Feeling unsure about how to handle it, Mike returned from the bathroom just in time. He saw what was happening, calmly placed his hands on the boss's shoulders, and guided him away to another table. After a bit, Mike came back to our table alone and asked, "That guy really can't handle his alcohol, can he? Are you okay?" That moment made me see Mike in a new light, and I decided to confess my feelings first, which led to our relationship. Things went smoothly from there, and we got married 3 years ago. Even though we don't have kids yet, our married life is strong. But there's one issue bothering me. My mother-in-law, with whom we currently live. Mike and I reside in his parents' house. Initially, we lived in an apartment, but it got affected by a fire in the neighboring unit, and our place got flooded during the firefighting effort. Having no other option, we had to evacuate since the apartment was uninhabitable. Unsure of where to go during the repairs, Mike's mother suggested, "Why don't you two stay at our place?" Grateful for the offer, we decided to live with Mike's parents. The trouble began after we moved in. Though she occasionally made snide comments even before, I tolerated them due to her deep love for Mike. However, her nagging intensified after we started living together. For example, one weekend, it happened as I was enjoying a cup of coffee in the living room after finishing all the housework. My mother-in-law returned home and immediately started bustling around the house. Then she came up to me and said, "Jessica, your cleaning is too sloppy. You need to spend more time on it and show some gratitude for your hardworking husband. As his wife, it's your duty to support him. I can't believe you can't even do this much. You're failing as a wife." I thought, here we go again. As these were almost daily comments, it seemed the only reason she allowed us to live together was to be with her son Mike again, and my presence as a wife was probably nothing more than an annoyance to her. Mike intervened, saying, "Please don't be so hard on Jessica." Well, there is some truth to what you're saying. Even if she's working part-time, slacking off on housework isn't good. Mike often sided with his mother, and while it's okay to value his biological mother, I sometimes wished he would stand up for me, his wife. In truth, I never intended to neglect household chores. Even working 4 days a week, I always managed our family's chores, even if just for a short time. This commitment held true even when I wasn't feeling well. Contrastingly, my mother-in-law, despite being a housewife, enjoys herself outside almost every day. Since we started living together, I haven't witnessed her doing any household chores. However, given that we're residing in her house, I can't openly express my dissatisfaction. In this awkward situation, I simply kept my patience. Then one day, something unexpected occurred. Mike proposed that we go on a trip, just the two of us. How about a spa resort next month? The busy season is over, and I need to take some annual leave. If I'm going to relax, I thought it would be nice to go somewhere peaceful. A spa sounds fantastic. I haven't scheduled any work shifts for next month, so I can take time off. After discussing details, we decided on a 2-day spa trip in the middle of the next month. Since we planned to go on a weekday, we anticipated a quiet and leisurely time. I was thrilled and couldn't contain my excitement. Whenever I had a moment, I gathered information about our destination. Just as we were considering booking our stay, my mother-in-law made an unexpected statement. "Jessica, I heard you're going on a trip with Mike. Why didn't you tell me?" "Well, honestly, I was afraid you might insist on joining if you knew, but I couldn't say that." As I stumbled for words, my mother-in-law sighed in frustration. Then she voiced exactly what I feared. "Next month is my husband's and my anniversary. I'd love to celebrate with a family trip. A luxurious hotel would be perfect." Like a child throwing a tantrum, my mother-in-law expressed her desire to go on the trip. Of course, I have no interest in going on a trip with my mother-in-law. But this time, Mike and I were considering going by ourselves. "How about we plan to go together next time?" I tried to be accommodating in my response, but my mother-in-law wouldn't relent, insisting it's not the same if it's not for our anniversary celebration. In my mind, I thought she should go with her husband for their anniversary celebration. Just as I was about to express that, Mike walked in from work. "Mike, welcome home. I was just discussing the trip with Jessica." "Oh, I can't wait." My mother-in-law, already excited, began sharing her wishes, and Mike seemed to be in agreement with her. I wondered who spilled the beans about the trip, and it probably was Mike the way things were unfolding. Catching my gaze, Mike appeared a bit uneasy. "Mom is really looking forward to it, so let's postpone our trip for another time. It'll be even more enjoyable if we all go together." By the way Mike was talking, it seemed he had already decided we were all going on the trip. Then my father-in-law chimed in, saying, "A vacation, huh? Sounds like fun." With that, it became impossible for me to decline the trip with the 4 of us. "All right, next time it's just going to be the 2 of us. Promise." Reluctantly, I agreed, and Mike gave me a relieved look. I wasn't entirely satisfied, but there was nothing I could do about it at this point. At the very least, I decided I would take charge of choosing the sightseeing spots and local dishes we wanted to experience. So I assumed the responsibility of making all the hotel reservations and planning the sightseeing schedule. Since my mother-in-law dislikes handling such preparations, my suggestions were accepted without any issues. The day of the trip arrived, and I had packed everything, including clothes, the day before. The plan was to wake up an hour before departure, have a relaxed breakfast, and then leave the house. I awoke to the sound of my alarm clock and stretched out, realizing Mike, who should have been beside me, was absent. Assuming he might be up and preparing, I headed to the living room. However, he wasn't there, nor in the bathroom, kitchen, or by the front door. Even my mother-in-law and father-in-law were nowhere to be seen. Could it be? With a sinking feeling, I dialed Mike's cell phone, but the call didn't connect. Calling my mother-in-law's phone next, she answered promptly. "Oh, Jessica dear, what's up?" "Mike can't answer right now. He's driving." "Where are the 3 of you?" I asked, and my mother-in-law responded casually. "Isn't it obvious? We're on a family vacation. We can't enjoy it with an outsider around, so you'll have to stay home. If we remember, we might even bring you a souvenir." I heard my mother-in-law's triumphant voice over the phone. "Stay at home? That's going to be a problem." At my words, my mother-in-law laughed scornfully. "Is that a problem? Poor you, just consider it punishment for not heeding my advice." With that, she abruptly hung up. I covered my face with both hands and shook my shoulders. Yet what escaped my mouth wasn't a sob, but a hearty laugh. They better enjoy their journey. I'm sure they'll regret leaving me behind. The sound of my alarm clock woke me up, and I stretched out, expecting to find Mike beside me. However, he was nowhere to be seen. Thinking he might have already gotten up and started preparing, I made my way to the living room. To my surprise, Mike wasn't there, and he wasn't in the bathroom, kitchen, or by the front door either. Even my mother-in-law and father-in-law were mysteriously absent. A sinking feeling crept over me. I dialed Mike's cell phone, but the call didn't connect. Trying my mother-in-law's phone next, she answered promptly. "Oh, Jessica dear, what's up?" "Mike can't answer right now. He's driving." "Where are the three of you?" I asked, and my mother-in-law responded nonchalantly. "Isn't it obvious? We're on a family vacation. We can't enjoy it with an outsider around, so you'll have to stay home. If we remember, we might even bring you a souvenir." My mother-in-law's triumphant voice echoed over the phone. "Stay at home? That's going to be a problem." I retorted, and she scoffed. "Is that a problem? Poor you, just consider it punishment for not listening to my advice." With that, she abruptly hung up. I covered my face with both hands and shook my shoulders. But instead of tears, hearty laughter escaped my lips. They better enjoy their journey. I'm sure they'll regret leaving me behind. Swiftly, I accessed a hotel booking site and secured a reservation at a lavish hotel in the tourist spot scheduled for today. Additionally, I booked a table at a restaurant for a delightful solo dinner experience. After a quick attire change and applying makeup, I had breakfast, thinking, all right, time to have fun. Grabbing my luggage, I hopped on the train. Armed with researched tourist spots I longed to explore, I embarked on a solo trip with a clear goal in mind. It's a small tourist spot, so there's a chance I might encounter Mike and the in-laws, but I'm unfazed. After all, they're the ones at fault. As these thoughts crossed my mind, the train arrived at its destination. From here on, I would let go of concerns about my mother-in-law and Mike, focusing on relishing the experience to the fullest. With this mindset, I ventured into a charming boutique, savored tea in a trendy cafe, and interacted with the locals, thoroughly enjoying my solo adventure. As night fell, it was time to check in. The hotel I had chosen ranked among the top luxury establishments in the area. I felt the need for a drastic change to rejuvenate myself. Walking through the automatic hotel doors towards the check-in counter, a woman's loud voice caught my attention. "Why can't we stay here? We're willing to pay." Upon closer inspection, I realized it was my mother-in-law causing the commotion. Naturally, they couldn't stay, as this wasn't the hotel I had booked for the four of us. Watching from a safe distance, I noticed Mike spotting me and exclaimed, "Hey Jessica, what's going on? We couldn't stay at the hotel you had booked, so we had to find another hotel, and they're full." As he approached me aggressively, my mother-in-law did the same, her face turning beet red with anger. Well, that's to be expected. They won't hand over the keys unless the person who made the reservation is present. It's a security measure. I did warn you, didn't I? At this point, they finally seemed to grasp their foolishness, exchanging glances in utter disbelief. Just as they were about to cause more chaos, several hotel staff members rushed over. The sight of my mother-in-law being gently but firmly escorted out of the hotel was rather comical. Remember this, we will stay in a place far more luxurious than this hotel. Feeling somewhat relieved, I decided to proceed with my check-in, leaving my accommodation-less mother-in-law and Mike behind. After completing the check-in process, I was escorted to my room. With its immaculate decor and opulent interior, it felt like I was in a dream. After placing my luggage down, I opted to explore the hotel. After a leisurely stroll, I returned to the check-in lobby, where guests kept arriving. I settled on a sofa and lost myself in thought for a while. As I sat there, a pair of young women settled beside me, animatedly sharing their impressions of the hotel. Their conversation took an interesting turn. "Hey, have you heard about the hotel near the station? There's a pretty spooky rumor going around. Supposedly, you can hear hallucinations in the second-floor room, and all your belongings get stolen. And not just that, there's even a case where someone died, and nobody knows who did it to this day. We're fortunate to be staying here, aren't we? Is that for real? But why hasn't anyone been arrested? You call the police in a situation like that, right? Well, there are rumors that the hotel staff are involved too. So creepy." What a chilling story. Glancing at the time, I realized it was nearly the hour for my dinner reservation. I swiftly got up and hurried to the restaurant. Ah, That was so satisfying. After relishing dinner, I returned to the hotel, took a relaxing bath, changed into my pajamas, and was watching TV when my smartphone notified me of an incoming call. Hello, we found a hotel we can stay in. It's super comfortable. Too bad you can't stay here with us. Well, we'll enjoy it twice as much for you, so no worries. It was my cheerful mother-in-law on the line. Huh, is that so? You're fortunate to have found a place on such short notice. My response was nonchalant, prompting my mother-in-law to continue. Isn't it? It's quiet and easy to spend time because there are hardly any other guests. It's close to the tourist spot and is a beautiful hotel. I wonder why that is. That's when it dawned on me. Could it be the hotel near the station? That's right. What about it? I recalled the unsettling story I overheard in the hotel lobby before heading to dinner. I think you should run. While I didn't necessarily believe the rumor, there's often a grain of truth in these tales. However, my mother-in-law dismissed my comment with laughter. Are you jealous of us staying at a good place? Well then, be regretful. Bye. Once again, she unilaterally ended the call, and I had no desire to call her back. Having offered my advice and fulfilled my duty, I powered off my smartphone. I wanted to enjoy my relaxation time without any further interruptions. After that, I spent a leisurely evening and peacefully drifted into a comfortable sleep. The next day, after checking out of the hotel, I visited the tourist spots I missed the day before and returned home as the sun was setting. Light spilled from the windows of the house, indicating the return of the three of them. I'm home. I deliberately announced my return in my usual manner. Upon opening the door to the living room, all three started talking simultaneously. Though taken aback, I managed to calm them down. Then my mother-in-law began recounting the incident from the previous night. After the three had gone to sleep, there were rustling sounds, and my mother-in-law reported hearing someone entering the room. Paralyzed by fear, she quietly stayed in bed as the intruder seemed to wander around the room for about 10 minutes before departing silently. Relieved, my mother-in-law went back to sleep, only to wake up the next morning and discover that all their belongings, including wallets and smartphones, were gone. The only items left were the coin pouch and key holder that Mike had placed in his jacket's inside pocket. In a state of panic, they reported the incident to the hotel staff, only to be coldly told, "Please pay for the room at least," without any effort to involve the police. Faced with this dilemma, the distressed trio used the remaining coins in Mike's possession to make a call from a public phone to a nearby relative, seeking assistance. Fortunately, the relative arrived promptly, covering the hotel charges and ensuring their safe return home. While they mentioned intentions to report the incident to the police soon, their frustration turned towards me. If only you had earnestly warned us to leave, we wouldn't be in this mess. Exactly. You share some responsibility for this, Jessica. What do you plan to do about it? Yet, if my in-laws hadn't left me behind for their trip, this wouldn't have occurred in the first place. When I candidly expressed this sentiment, Mike erupted in anger. Shut up. You're just the wife. Don't get cheeky. We're getting a divorce. I can't put up with you anymore. I was too stunned to respond. Silently, I went to our bedroom, retrieved something from the cabinet, and returned to the living room to reveal it to Mike. Divorce. Fine by me. I don't need a husband who won't protect his mistreated wife. Mike's complexion turned pale. What I presented were the divorce papers prepared by a lawyer, as I had been anticipating this day. Perhaps not expecting my agreement, Mike was flustered. No, maybe we should think about it a little more. However, my mother-in-law seized the opportunity to push Mike towards the divorce. You should just get rid of such a horrible wife. Your mom will find you someone new. Unable to resist his mother's influence, Mike eventually consented to the divorce. Well then, goodbye. Please enjoy your life with your beloved family. Ignoring Mike, who was breaking down, I left the house. Later, through my lawyer, I submitted the divorce papers, and the divorce was successfully finalized. Despite Mike's pitiful pleas for reconciliation, I steadfastly ignored them all. I'm going to protect Jessica from now on, he claimed. Unfortunately, it was too late. On the flip side, my mother-in-law, who had successfully rid herself of me, initially appeared to be in good spirits. However, her joy was short-lived. The news of the divorce and the end of their shared living arrangement spread throughout the neighborhood. The gossip mongers connected it to her mistreatment of me, unveiling her unpleasant character. People in the community began pointing fingers at her, and the prospect of finding a new wife for Mike seemed to lose its urgency. I returned to my hometown and secured a new job through a friend's recommendation. I've had my fill of marriage for now. It seems like I'll relish the freedom of being single for a while.
I'm Chelsea. A few weeks ago, my father, who had been battling an illness, passed away. I often find myself wishing I could have shown him his grandchildren. It's a regret that lingers. I got married when I was 25, exactly 5 years ago. At my wedding, my father and I made a promise. I'll let you know first when I get pregnant. But I never got the chance to fulfill that promise. It's the only regret I have regarding my father. Since his illness was discovered a year ago, I did everything I could for him. I regularly returned to my parents' home, visited the hospital with my mother, and made frequent phone calls and video chats. I tried to be there for him as much as possible. Yet, I still wonder, could I have done more? I whispered. My mother, sitting beside me, gently reassured me. You did well, Chelsea. Do you really think so? Yes, your father would be satisfied. Just then, my sister, Portia, returned with the lawyer. She entered the living room and announced, "The lawyer is here." A man in his mid-40s followed her in. I assumed he was the lawyer and accepted his business card. I'm Samuel, the attorney. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Thank you, he replied, taking a seat. As soon as he sat down, Portia blurted out, I heard from this lawyer that Dad left quite an inheritance. It's not all for you, Portia, I responded. I know that, she snapped, glaring at me. I glared back. My sister and I have never been close, but things worsened when we found out about Dad's illness. Her arrogant attitude strained our relationship even further. No matter how many times I reached out, she never visited our father. Maybe it was too harsh in my attempts to get her to come, but her indifference only made things worse. You're not a child, you don't have to be so stubborn, I once told her. She retorted, I'm not being stubborn. I live in the city, it's not easy to come to the countryside. But it's only a 2-hour drive. Those 2 hours are tough. It costs money. So money's more important to you than seeing Dad? Of course it is. I'm busy, so stop contacting me. And that was the last time she spoke to me about it. Even though she lived far away, she could have visited once in a while. That's why our relationship deteriorated so quickly. In the end, my sister never visited our father, and our relationship remained strained. Sensing the tension, the lawyer intervened. Let's calm down, please. Okay, sorry, I apologize. The lawyer nodded and continued. As I mentioned on the phone, I have your father's will. When did this happen? My mother murmured. A few weeks before he passed away, he contacted me. So you went to the hospital? Yes, I had him write the will in front of me with his primary physician present. They had arranged for the doctor to contact the lawyer when my father passed away, so after his death, the lawyer reached out to us. That's how it happened and why we're here now, the lawyer explained, pulling out a white envelope. He placed it in front of us. This is the will. That's definitely Dad's handwriting, I muttered, verifying the writing on the envelope. Portia seemed impatient. Never mind, just tell us what's in it. I'm busy, you know. Very well, the lawyer said with a wry smile, opening the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. It stated that besides the house and land, my father's inheritance included some savings and a storage shed. We knew about the house and land, but what's this about a storage shed? I wondered aloud. My sister angrily interrupted. Wait a minute, what about the farm? The farm? Yes, the farm Dad used to work on as a hobby. My father had run a company in the next town, but after turning 50, he decided to close it down and take it easy. My sister, who was in college at the time, opposed the idea, but my mother and I, concerned about his health, agreed. Don't worry about the money, Portia. We have enough savings, my father reassured her. Reluctantly, she agreed. After that, my father closed his company and started farming near our home. It feels good to move my body while farming, he used to say, looking content. Seeing him like that made me glad I had supported his decision. But my sister didn't share the sentiment. She had planned to return home after graduating from college, but instead, she got a job near her university and eventually married the CEO of an IT company she met through work. Anyway, my sister was adamant that the farm should also be part of the inheritance. The lawyer reviewed the documents after hearing this from my sister. He quickly found a note and said, "The farm is rented land." Rented? I thought we owned a large piece of land, my sister said, clearly disappointed. Indeed, the farm where my father grew vegetables was spacious, but it might be too much for us who know nothing about farming. Maybe it's a good thing it's rented, I thought. The conversation then shifted to dividing the inheritance. As for the division of the inheritance, the house and land go to your mother, the lawyer said. My sister grinned. So we can divide the rest however we want? Please divide the savings and storage shed equally between you two. Savings means cash, right? I'll take the cash. How much is it? The savings amount to about $100,000. There's no need to pay inheritance tax on this amount. Then I'll take the $100,000 in cash, my sister declared triumphantly. But I couldn't agree with such a selfish arrangement. I strongly protested against my sister. Wait a minute, I object. Why? I'm the eldest. That doesn't matter. You can have the storage shed. What? Even that? What even is that anyway? My sister turned back to the lawyer, flipping through the documents. The lawyer answered, It's the storage shed next to the farm. You'll inherit the building, the land, and its contents. With land? My sister's eyes lit up. Even though she's married to the CEO of an IT company, does she still want more money? I wondered. The lawyer continued, The land comes with it, but it's only about 65 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom. A small bedroom? Yes, here are the photos. The lawyer placed photos of the shed on the table. Pictures of both the interior and exterior were displayed. The exterior clearly looked like a rundown shack. The inside contained only basic tools like hoses, scissors, and shovels, nothing that seemed valuable. I don't want it, my sister grimaced. I glanced at the photos too. It was all very ordinary. These are sentimental items, but they won't bring in any money. As I was thinking this, my sister spoke up. Fine, I'll take the cash. You can have that dirty shed. Hold on, that's not fair. You agreed to the vegetable farming. What are you complaining about now? It was hard to argue when she put it that way. Still, if I didn't say something, she'd take all of Dad's inheritance. So we're good then? My sister pressed me. As I struggled to answer, my mother chimed in. As long as Portia won't complain later, I have no objections. There's no way I would. Then Portia gets the cash and Chelsea gets the shed. Okay? Looks like it's settled then, my sister said with a smirk. Feeling uneasy, I immediately objected. No, I'm not okay with this. Oh, just drop it, she snapped back. But you're being so greedy, I retorted. That's not it. You're such a hassle. You care more about Dad than the money, right? Her words caught me off guard, leaving me speechless. Of course, family meant more than money to me. While money is important, it doesn't compare to family. As I mulled over this, my sister quickly ended the conversation. In the end, our mother got the house and land, my sister got Dad's savings, and all that was left for me was the old, dirty shed. Afterward, my sister signed a document agreeing not to dispute the inheritance division. She laughed loudly while I felt full of complaints. I couldn't help but vent to her mother. Mom, why didn't you help me? I did help you. How? You sided with Portia. That's not true. I made sure you got the shed. Huh? I'm not happy about getting that shed. You might find something surprisingly good if you look closely, she said with a smile. I could only puff out my cheeks in frustration. The next day, I took the key from the lawyer and headed to the shed near the field. It was a 10-minute walk from home, along a quiet rural road. When I reached the field that my father had rented, I found it overgrown and neglected since he had been hospitalized for the past year. I unlocked the shed and opened the door. Wow, it's dusty. The place was covered in dust, a clear sign that no one had cleaned it in ages. Still, there might be something sentimental from Dad here. With that thought, I looked around the shed, but it was just a dirty old place filled with farming tools. They were nostalgic, but nothing special. Maybe I should just take what's inside for now, I muttered as I surveyed the shed. That's when I noticed something strange. It seems smaller inside than it looks from the outside. Maybe it was the dim light, but the interior felt cramped. Is it just my imagination? I wondered. I stepped outside again, but something still felt off. After thinking about it, I decided to walk around to the back of the shed, where I discovered a surprise: another door. Wait, there's a back entrance, I gasped. From inside, it had seemed like there was only one entrance, yet here was a hidden door at the back. What was going on? There had to be a hidden space between the walls. Realizing this, I felt a surge of excitement. Dad always loved surprises, and this was just his style. I quickly returned inside the shed and began searching for a key to the back door. If this was Dad's doing, he would have hidden it somewhere clever. With that thought, I rummaged through the shed and eventually found 2 keys hidden inside the handle of a shovel. I rushed around to the back and tried one of the keys in the door. With a click, it opened. What could be in here? The space was indeed small, just about 3 feet wide. Inside stood a large safe, one I recognized from Dad's office when I was a child. Hugging the safe, I felt a wave of nostalgia and fulfillment wash over me. This alone made the inheritance worthwhile. But knowing Dad, this couldn't be the end. There's got to be more, I muttered as I inserted the second key into the safe. With a slightly rusty creak, it opened. What? No way. I was stunned by what I saw inside. The inheritance was far beyond my expectations. What should I do? I need to tell Mom. I locked the safe and hurried home. After explaining the situation to my mother, I called my husband for help, and we moved the safe to our place. As we did, it hit me. The contents were undoubtedly valuable, and I realized I might need to check if inheritance tax applied. After consulting with a lawyer, I was advised to get a certified public accountant involved. A friend referred me to one, and I left the complex matters in their hands. Half a year passed, and just as I thought everything had settled down, my sister showed up near my home. What brings you here all of a sudden? I asked. I had some business at Mom's house. So you stopped by? Yeah, something like that. Her behavior was strange, no matter how I looked at it. Even though my home was close to her parents, it was still a 20-minute drive. We weren't the type of sisters who casually visited each other, especially after the tension surrounding Dad's inheritance. I couldn't shake my suspicion as I watched her fidget. Can I come in? She asked nervously. Sure, but what's going on? I have something to talk about, she said, forcing a smile. Reluctantly, I let her in. After I served some coffee, she started to fidget again before finally blurting out. Did you win the lottery or something? What? No, I didn't. Then did your husband get a big bonus? I tilted my head, puzzled. I never bought lottery tickets, and it wasn't the time of year for my husband's holiday bonus. What on earth was she talking about? Confused, I asked directly, Hey, what are you talking about? Suddenly, she snapped, What, are you making fun of me? No, what are you talking about? Money, you've got it, don't you? I heard about it, she said excitedly. She began to recount a story from a few days ago. While in the city, she had run into her aunt, who started the conversation with, I know it's been hard since you lost your father. Are you doing okay? Yes, I visited him many times while he was sick, my sister had replied. Thank you, but you must be relieved now, right? After getting that big thank you gift. Thank you gift? Yes, your sister sent me a $500 gift card for visiting him. A gift card? Needless to say, the mention of a gift card piqued my sister's curiosity. Hearing that I had sent it, she became convinced that I had come into some money. You got a windfall, didn't you? Just admit it, she demanded. Ah, that's what this is about, I sighed. My sister didn't like my response and yelled, What's with that attitude? Are you mocking me? No, it was just a thank you gift. So where did you get the money for it? That's what I want to know. From the inheritance, remember? Inheritance. But all you got was that dirty shed. Yes, that's true. But you can't sell that for money. But there was a safe inside. That's where the real inheritance was. A safe? Real inheritance. I carefully explained about the watches inside the safe. They were valuable pieces my father had collected as a hobby during his lifetime. Although I didn't know their exact worth, I suspected that Dad had invested a significant amount in them. If they're valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax, my mother had said after seeing the contents of the safe. What should I do, Mom? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. She paused, considering my question, then advised, when it comes to things like this, honesty is the best policy. You should declare everything properly. How should I go about that? I wondered. We should consult the lawyer again, my mother suggested. I took her advice and revisited the lawyer. He explained that the inheritance tax is based on the value of the valuables at the time of inheritance. He also recommended consulting a certified public accountant to handle the details. Following his advice, I engaged an accountant who appraised the watches in the safe and determined their value to be at least $500,000. You'll definitely need to pay inheritance tax on those watches, the lawyer confirmed. How should I handle the payment? I asked. Perhaps you could keep the ones that hold sentimental value and sell the rest, he suggested. Since I wasn't knowledgeable about the true value of the watches, it made sense to sell some of them. I sold a few, used the proceeds to pay the inheritance tax, and sent thank you gifts to the relatives who had supported us. Those gifts were the gift cards my sister had mentioned. I kept the items with the most sentimental value, like the pocket watch my father often wore. I showed it to my sister as I recounted this. This one may not be expensive, but it holds the most memories for me, I said. My sister's reaction was less than favorable. What? You don't have any left? No, there are still some in the safe. Where's the safe? It's at Mom's. The safe is too large for my house. It's the same one Dad used at his company. My sister said, looking away with a thoughtful expression. Her reaction made me uneasy, but she abruptly stood up and said, I'm leaving now that I know where the money came from, and left. Given my sister's obsession with money, I was relieved she didn't press further. Yet a sense of unease lingered, and I was reminded of it late that night when my mother called urgently. Chelsea, it's an emergency. You need to come over right away. What happened, Mom? I asked, alarmed. It's bad. I'm not sure what to do, she replied, frantic. My husband and I rushed to my parents' house, only to find the area illuminated by red lights from police cars. What's going on? I asked as we approached. It became clear when we saw several police cars parked outside. I pushed through the crowd to find my mother. What happened, Mom? Well, Chelsea, it's a mess, she began. According to my mother, she had gone to bed early after a long day. Around 9 p.m., she heard noises that sounded like someone searching through the house. Could it be a burglar? She wondered. Alone in the house, she decided to escape through the window, noticing a flashlight moving inside as she fled. Thinking it was a burglar, she ran to a neighbor's house and asked for help. The neighbor saw the flashlight too and called the police. However, it wasn't a burglar. It was my sister who had broken into the house to search through the safe after hearing about its contents. My mother and the neighbor had no way of knowing this. When the police arrived, my sister, caught in her own panic, tried to flee. In her haste, she bumped into the open safe, which toppled over and landed on her. So, Portia ended up trapped under the safe? I asked. Yes, that's right, my mother confirmed. Is she okay? I inquired, concerned. She was taken to the hospital. She keeps complaining about her leg hurting. What on earth was she thinking? I was baffled. After apologizing to the police for the late-night call, I phoned my sister's husband. Wait, you're saying Portia broke into her own family home and got injured? Yes. What is she doing? She doesn't even do housework. I'm really sorry about my sister. That's it, I'm filing for divorce. Divorce? I was taken aback. Apparently, my sister had accumulated significant debt from spending on luxury items. Her husband had just discovered this and had a huge argument with her. She had stormed out, intending to borrow money from our mother. After spending her inheritance to pay off some of her debts, she came to me for more. Her actions led to the chaos with the safe. In the end, my sister, with a fractured leg, was hospitalized. Her husband arrived at the hospital with divorce papers, and despite her protests, she had no choice but to sign. Now she lies in her hospital bed, stunned. A part-time job magazine beside her suggests she plans to work to repay her debts, which might provide some relief. As for me, I decided to move back to my parents' home despite the upheaval. With my mother's help, I plan to manage childcare and support during my pregnancy. Although I wished I could have shared the news with my father, I'm looking forward to the future and welcoming our baby. Nearly a decade ago, I found myself struggling with doubts about my husband. I was in my early 30s and newly married, and while I had anticipated challenges given his demanding work schedule, the reality was far more isolating. My husband's absences stretched for weeks at a time, leaving me feeling increasingly alone. Despite my efforts to welcome him home with understanding, my frustration grew, and I became harsh whenever he was around. His attempts to comfort me only led to further silence when he sensed my dissatisfaction. I yearned for his attention despite his busy career. My emotions clouded my judgment, and I couldn't view him objectively anymore. Whenever we argued, he would promise, "I'll settle down soon, and we'll visit that island you love." But those promises remained unfulfilled. One evening, I said, "Work seems more important to you than me? If that's the case, don't force yourself to come home. I'm exhausted too, and seeing you so detached only makes me sad." No matter how harshly I spoke, he never seemed to take my words to heart. The growing realization that our marriage might be ending became a nagging worry. It wasn't until I discovered a hotel receipt and membership card in his suit pocket that I began to suspect infidelity. The receipt showed that he had stayed at the hotel on a day he was supposedly on a business trip, earning points for multiple nights. My husband's popularity with women at work, combined with the evidence I found, led me to believe he had found another partner. Why should I suffer while he's with someone else? I thought, and I started planning outings and weekends to distract myself. For a while, the distractions were enjoyable, but eventually, the facade wore thin. I grew tired of pretending and realized that maybe it was time for both of us to move on. Avoiding each other had become the norm, and perhaps he would be happier with someone else. It was clear that the life we had shared was no longer what I wanted. Summoning the courage to ask for a divorce was daunting. I questioned whether there was any other option, but it seemed my husband was also involved with someone new. After much deliberation, I sent him a text. "Can you come home early today? We need to talk." He replied promptly, "I need to talk to you too. I'll try to leave as soon as I can." As I waited for him to return, my heart raced with anxiety. I felt a mix of certainty and fear about our decision. My husband's heart seemed to be elsewhere. When he arrived home shortly after 9 p.m., I noticed he had lost a significant amount of weight. Despite his kind eyes and familiar voice, there was an emotional distance between us. He remained mostly silent, which made me feel as though he was dismissing our shared history. I became increasingly frustrated and began to argue. Despite my anger, he listened quietly. When I confronted him about his new girlfriend, he seemed surprised and briefly smiled. His reaction, rather than anger, made me laugh. For the first time in a long while, we shared a genuine laugh, which was a bittersweet reminder of happier times. Our conversation took an unexpected turn as my husband, looking revitalized, said, "Let's stop attacking each other. I don't want to leave you because I don't dislike you." He agreed to my proposal to sort out our belongings and prepare for our separation. He even encouraged me to take anything I wanted, saying it was his way of atonement. As we cleaned the room, his tears and sadness were palpable. I felt the same way and decided to take a break for the rest of the day. After our cleaning session, I took a bath to clear my mind, knowing that our relationship was coming to an end. I didn't want to tarnish my memories of him any further. When I was ready for bed, my husband entered the room and gently held me. "This feels strange," I said. "I feel sorry for your girlfriend." He quietly replied, "Just one more time, I want to be by your side." His trembling embrace and weight loss were evident. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You seem different." He admitted he had been losing weight and, despite my questions, seemed reluctant to explain further. His physical change was a stark contrast to the muscular build I was used to. "She likes me like this," he said. Feeling a mix of sadness and resignation, I remarked, "If he's so happy with her, why doesn't he just move on? I guess there's no need to cry, or maybe these are tears of joy." In a final attempt to manage my emotions, I said, "You're still the same. I appreciate that part of you. I wish you happiness from tomorrow on." "I'll be praying for you wherever you are," my husband said softly before he began to snore. He had always moved at his own pace right until the end. "I hope so too," I murmured to his sleeping face before drifting off myself. The exhaustion from staying up late to clean the room caused me to oversleep the next morning. When I finally woke up, my husband was gone. In the living room, I found an A4-size envelope on the table. Inside, I discovered a bank book and a collection of documents related to our marital property. Among the papers was a surprisingly large sum of money in the bank book, and in a small envelope were the completed divorce papers with only my signature missing. Panic set in as I tried to call my husband's cell phone, but it had been disconnected. I spent several days trying to locate him through his parents and friends, but no one would give me any information. Eventually, I contacted his company only to learn that my husband had resigned months earlier. His departure, if it were simply to be with a new girlfriend, might have made sense, but this seemed extreme. Why had he gone to such lengths to avoid me? The mental strain from these revelations was overwhelming. My husband had gone to considerable effort to arrange financial compensation for me, and now that I was free, I decided to seek solace on a remote island I had always loved. The island, home to only about 3,000 people, was a day-long journey from the mainland. I had visited it once with my husband and was enchanted by its natural beauty and tranquil pace. He had promised we would return after his work was done. Though I missed him, perhaps I needed the island's peace and quiet. I quit my job and rented out our house, making the risky move to the island. I wasn't sure how he managed the mortgage, but it was clear he had worked tirelessly. The house was filled with memories, and I couldn't stay there any longer. Determined not to waste his efforts, I resolved to embrace island life. I adjusted to the slower pace and began helping elderly neighbors with their needs. Initially seen as an outsider, I eventually became accepted as part of the community. With enough assets to live comfortably, I found that idleness was dispiriting, so I took on the role of assisting the local elderly. As I grew accustomed to the work, I felt more integrated into island life. One day, I learned from a coworker that a new resident had arrived for medical treatment. This person had chosen the island as his final residence due to a lack of treatment options elsewhere. When the new resident requested a visit and I was the only one available, I was nervous as I headed to his house. It was a small home on a hill with an ocean view, renovated enough to be livable but still modest. I rang the doorbell and a soft voice invited me in. Inside, I found the new resident sitting in front of a window, the sun and breeze surrounding him. As I approached, I squinted to make out his face against the backlight. "Good to meet you today, sir," I said. When he turned to face me, I was stunned. There, sitting before me, was my ex-husband. We both stood there in shock, unable to move. My ex-husband broke the silence with a mischievous smile. "You found me out," he said. Confusion and disbelief overwhelmed me. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, grappling with the fact that he wasn't supposed to be here and the information I had received. He took my hand and guided me to sit beside him. He held my hand until I relaxed, leaving me at a loss for words. As I sat there, I heard a voice at the door. I wiped my tears and opened it to find an elderly man. Surprised by my tear-streaked face, he bowed and entered, taking a seat next to my ex-husband. "How are you today?" he asked gently. My ex-husband responded that everything was fine and began chatting with the elderly man. I realized that the man was likely the island's only doctor. I remembered my colleagues mentioning the island's reliance on a small clinic and its sole practitioner. It seemed my ex-husband had come to spend his final days here. I listened intently, wondering if there was anything I could do to help. The doctor's visit lasted about 10 minutes. Unable to hold back, I ran after him as he left. My anxious demeanor startled him, but when I explained our connection, he seemed to understand. He couldn't disclose my ex-husband's condition or treatment details without his consent, but mentioned that my ex-husband might soon be unable to walk. "It's a pity for him to spend his final days alone. Please be there for him," the doctor advised. I was stunned. What had become of my husband's girlfriend? Heavy-hearted, I returned to the house where my husband awaited me. He greeted me with a knowing smile, as if he had anticipated my questioning the doctor. "You're back," he said. Desperate to be close to him, I asked if I could spend the night. His house was sparsely furnished with just a few pieces of luggage and some futons. It was the first time since our discussion about divorce that I had slept beside him. As we settled under the covers, we shared our stories of how we ended up here. I was eager to ask about his illness, but decided to avoid painful topics for now, instead reminiscing about happier times. My feelings about his past relationship were complicated. I inquired if he had brought her to the island before I arrived, but he only laughed and suggested there was a sorrowful story behind it that he wasn't ready to discuss. I chose not to press further to avoid hurting his feelings. The next morning, I informed my employer of the situation and took some time off to be with my husband. I pushed him around the island in a wheelchair, showing him the places I remember from our previous visit and sharing new sights with him. It was comforting to be together, even in these circumstances. I wish we had been more open with each other when we were married. Despite our divorce, my feelings for him remained strong, but I knew expressing them might confuse him. I decided to be by his side as a friend, cherishing the time we had left. The disease took a toll on him, gradually diminishing his strength until he could no longer walk or even enjoy the long-awaited walks we had planned. Daily tasks became increasingly difficult, and he began to sleep more frequently. The doctor visited daily, and while my husband was no longer in pain, it was heartbreaking to see him deteriorate. I couldn't accept that he was leaving me so soon. I stayed with him constantly, reading his favorite books and telling him about the sights and sounds he had missed. I wanted to share a beautiful sunset with him, but his hand had grown cold and his breathing was shallow and irregular. Panic surged as I called the doctor, who promised to come immediately. I awaited him with a sinking heart, hoping for reassurance that everything would be all right. When the doctor arrived, he examined my husband and said, "His blood pressure has dropped significantly. Let him go peacefully. I believe he wants you to stay with him, so I'll step back and be available if needed. Please remain by his side." With that, the doctor left. The moment had arrived. I knew it was inevitable, but it was still unbearable. I'm grateful for our time together. We faced challenges, but I truly adore you, I whispered to my husband as I held his hand. He gave a gentle squeeze in return, an impossible yet unmistakable gesture. Soon after, he took his final breath. I cried endlessly but felt solace in being there for him in his last moments. In the aftermath, I was so busy with arrangements and sorting through his belongings that I had no time to mourn until after the burial. When I finally returned home, I found a mountain of mail waiting for me. Among the letters, I discovered the familiar handwriting of my husband. He had written dozens of letters over the time we had been apart. His letters began on the day of our reunion. He had moved to the island hoping to find me and was delighted and surprised when he actually did. Reading his letters, I laughed at his humor and felt deeply touched by his affection. The letters, dated daily, showed a gradual decline in his handwriting and the length of his messages, reflecting the progression of his illness. One letter revealed the truth about our divorce. My husband's illness had started during our marriage, and despite treatment, there was no hope for recovery. He had planned the divorce to spare me from the burden of his illness and to provide for my future with the assets he liquidated. I had fallen into his trap, unaware of his true intentions, but he had hoped to leave me well provided for. The realization of his sacrifice and the pain it caused overwhelmed me. Tears flowed freely. A knock at the door interrupted my grief. I opened it to find the doctor standing there. "What brings you here, doctor?" I asked. He handed me a sealed envelope, identical to the one I had just read from my husband. He asked me to post a few days' worth of letters before he fell into a coma. I couldn't refuse, and this is the last letter. He wanted me to give it to you when you returned home. I thanked the doctor and read the final letter alone. It was a simple but heartfelt note. "Thank you. I love you. Though our journey was difficult, our hearts remain connected." "I love you too," I whispered, feeling as though I saw a faint smile on my husband's portrait. I continue to live on this island, now officially recognized as a resident. I built a grave next to where my husband's house once stood. I am certain he still watches over the island from his window. One day, I will join him there. For now, I find peace and happiness surrounded by the memories of our time together. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I look forward to